You're listening to That's Pretty Dark,
the podcast where we talk about all of the entertainment that scared us as children
and still haunts us as adults. So grab your flashlight and join us as we take a frightfully nostalgic look over our shoulders.
And under our beds.
And in our closets.
And together we'll realize, whoa, that's pretty dark.
That's pretty dark. So for like the past few weeks, I've been walking around my house going, Pinocchio! Hey, Pinocchio! Because the actual, like, the way you're supposed to pronounce it is Pinocchio. Pinocchio.
Yeah, Italian.
It's like two separate things.
Pinocchio.
I looked it up.
Good for you.
I know what I'm talking about.
You used the Google this time.
Mm-hmm.
Listener, hello and welcome.
Hi.
To That's Pretty Dark.
Welcome to 2023.
The first episode of 2023.
Wow.
My name is Kaylin.
My name's Christian.
Christian is my best friend, and I have to confess something to you guys and to him just right here at the top of the episode.
Should I be
the first of the year?
Nervous? Should I be afraid?
I mean, you're not going to be happy with me. Listeners won't care, but you will.
Professing your love.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I get it. It happens.
I watched the Del Toro Pinocchio today.
You watched the Del Toro Pinocchio without me?
Without you.
My God, I've been waiting. I've been putting it off.
I know. But number one, I needed something to get me back into the Pinocchio mindset. And number two, I just had this I had this feeling like as you were going to dive into the history that I needed better context. And so I was doing a little bit of research and that's where I landed.
Well, see, now you're going to have to refrain from talking about that movie.
You're going to want to
reference it in context of the...
But what's great is, if you listener have seen it, I can interject and be like, you know what I want to say about Del Toro's Pinocchio. Christian doesn't.
You can also leave me little notes for future, after I've already seen it and I come back and listen to this episode.
Oh, yeah. Oh, dude, that's good. I can try to cryptically leave some Easter eggs.
Little Easter eggs.
That sounds fun. I do think that you're really going to love it whenever you do end up watching it.
I think I will.
But what I think that you will be upset and disturbed and disappointed by is Matilda the musical.
No, really?
Because I also watched that this weekend.
Because of all the dancing children.
Because of all the dancing children. You said that you don't like dancing children in our We're
really
Back episode.
Hate to see
and
it.
That was just a revelation because I did not know that. But
I did notice how they were
the choreography
shooking and jiving all throughout that trailer. And I was like, whoa, God.
I am not dissing the movie. I think they did a great job with it. It's definitely not like the 90s Matilda that we're used to.
The one that we're going to cover.
Sure, yeah, the one that we'll eventually talk about. I liked it a lot, but Christian probably won't. Anyway, today we're not here to talk about Matilda.
We are here to finish our series on Pinocchio. And I don't know if we're going to correct any of the trauma, heal any of the trauma from last time, or if we're just going to make it worse.
Probably make it worse before it gets better.
Compounded trauma.
Mm-hmm. Complex PTSD.
So last time we left off with the death of Pinocchio. If you didn't listen to part one, you're going to want to go catch that.
Oh, yeah.
And if you found yourself upset by our conclusion to part one, then you might agree with the author of this article from Slate.com called Bad Things Happen to Bad Children. The real Pinocchio is nothing like you remember. This article reads like an essay I would have angrily written for a college class. Sleep deprived, at my most cynical and fatalistic and just hating everything. I would have ripped this to shreds. And this is what this person does. His name is Nathaniel Rich. And he claims that Collodi hated children, as evidenced by how Pinocchio and all the other boys are depicted and insulted throughout the entirety of the narration.
I mean, I get it.
Yeah?
I understand. No, I don't get hating children. I mean, you know what I mean.
No. Yeah.
I understand how he would think that.
Sure. It's one interpretation of the events. He heavily criticizes Collodi for seemingly relishing every description of Pinocchio's suffering in a sort of sadistic and malicious way. He focuses on how Pinocchio becoming a real boy is a complete afterthought, because the final 2/3 of the book weren't part of Collodi's original intention. So he goes on to berate Collodi, writing, "The appeal is obvious. When left to his own devices, Pinocchio is a hero of child loafers and rebels everywhere. But the fun never lasts long. And then the violence begins." Which I did like that line. But
I mean, it's not inaccurate.
It's a pretty cynical takeaway, though, I will say.
Mm-hmm.
An opposite view, however, comes from an article from The New Yorker called What the Original Pinocchio Really Says About Lying. which is an excerpt from a larger work titled Love and Lies, an essay on truthfulness, deceit, and the growth and care of erotic love.
I'd like to read that, in fact.
Yeah, I wanted to reference the larger work because I feel like that would be interesting to you or some of our other listeners.
Mm-hmm.
The author of this, Clancy Martin, he suggests that it's possible much of Collodi's criticisms were actually some tongue-in-cheek cleverness. He says, Collodi also tells a lot of stories to illustrate how commonly adults mislead children into misbehaviors that the children otherwise might not have pursued.
He's putting it back on the adults because at the end of the day, the adults are the ones that are responsible or should
take responsibility.
We should expect more of adults than we do of children.
Absolutely.
I'll say that much.
And he goes on to say, moreover, the story is told by a writer of fiction who is making veiled, often sarcastic observations about the politics of late 19th century Italy. Perhaps Collodi is an advocate for truth in one way, but in another, he is clearly someone who understands the subtleties of communication and the necessity for pretense, irony, and disguise. It's pretty Shakespearean.
It's hard for me to say yet without having fully gotten into this episode and what you're going to tell us about the history and about Collodi himself. But that spirit of irony and tongue-in-cheek commentary is alive and well in the Walt Disney film.
Absolutely it is.
I would like to think that's a thread that carries through.
So whether Collodi was exercising a cynical philosophy or just having a bit of gruesome fun is totally up to the reader and now our listeners to decide. And like you were just saying, you as well.
Yep, I'm on this ride with you guys.
You had some choice words for Collodi at the end of part one.
I did.
As I'm sure many of our listeners probably did as well.
Namely, what is wrong with you and what happened to you?
Who do you think you are?
Right. Who hurt you?
Exactly. Well, we're going to find out. Let me tell you all about it. Let's dive into the life of Collodi and where Pinocchio came from. To understand why The Adventures of Pinocchio is generally such a dark story, we have to understand the man who wrote them. Carlo Collodi, born Carlo Lorenzini, was born in Florence, Italy in 1826. He took Collodi as a pen name because Collodi is a village in Tuscany where his mother was born. She was a servant and his father was a cook, and so they made an honest, if modest, living. When he finished with primary school, he was sent to study at a theological seminary. And when he realized he didn't want to be a priest, he got a job at a bookstore.
Nice.
In Florence called Libreria Piatti when he was around 17 to 18 years old.
I want to go there. I'm sure it doesn't exist today.
Probably doesn't.
A lot of things do.
I'm sure there's like a plaque on the wall that says like, this used to be Libreria Piatti. And there he worked under one Giuseppe Azzi. Remember him from last time?
I do.
I briefly mentioned him. This guy was said to be a prominent Italian manuscript specialist. And he was something of I don't know like all the timeline, but he was a mentor to Collodi and something of a father figure. I think he taught him a lot of the ways of the world when he was like, I don't want to be a priest. I don't want to go that route.
I need an alternative.
I'm going to go work with books. And this guy was like, come, let me teach you all the stuff.
There's more to life than that.
Right. So from there, learning all the tricks of this book trade, Collodi began writing. Now, Collodi was a soldier in 2 of the 3 Italian wars of independence. Not that anyone can be summed up in just a few words, but Collodi's life can be separated into 2 great eras: pre-unification Italy and post-unification Italy. And I'm not going to get full on college history.
I mean, no, I'm sitting here like a student. I'm just absorbing.
I did study this in college. When I was a history minor, I took Italian history. So I learned a lot of this stuff and then completely forgot it, wiped the whole memory slate clean, and I relearned a lot of it.
Unlike
the past few weeks.
Some of our episodes that do touch on the sociology and psychology, there might be moments that I'm aware of, but I've never, ever once taken any type of course on Italian history.
It's pretty fun.
The only Italian history that I know, I was actually brushing up on my World War II history prior to this episode because of the context of the Disney film.
The film, right. Right. Man, look at us. Just a couple little.
And Del Toro's.
His story. Oh, yeah. That's not all right. I can't wait to watch it. I'm just jealous mostly.
Sorry.
All right. So I'm going to keep this super painless. It's going to be very easy. You guys ready?
We can do it, guys. We can do it. I know we're kicking our year off learning something new.
Get you some stromboli. Eat some spaghetti. Or be like me tonight. I'm going to have pizza.
I wish I could have pizza.
Italian unification. Risorgimento is such a huge marker of European history that it fits right in with both the French and American revolutions. But I'm not going to dig into all of it, but just know that Italy was first united under the Roman Republic way back when, and it remained unified until the fall of the Western Roman Empire. From that day forward, Italy had not been ruled by Italians. There are unification sentiments and anti-foreign dominance propaganda in Italian writings dating back to the Renaissance.
Wow.
Both Petrarch and Machiavelli appealed to the ancient valor in Italian hearts and made something of a prophecy that one day a ruler would come along to unite Italy and set her free. I read some of the writings. I didn't want to quote all of it, but it is beautiful. A lot of what they were saying, I was like, I can see like growing up in Italy in this time and being like, yeah.
It's like patriotism. Like you should care about your country kind of thing.
But it wasn't until the Napoleonic Wars ended feudalism in Italy and established the Italian Republic that the Risorgimento had any legs to stand on. But that was the beginning of their efforts, especially once the wars ended and the Congress of Vienna decided to put the Austrian Empire back in charge of Italy. And it was just a huge mess. And that is what led to the first war of Italian independence, because the people got a taste of that freedom. And then the powers that be was like, never mind, you don't get to have it.
Took it away.
And they were like, no, we are not going to stand for this.
And give me the year again to keep my timeline clear in my head.
The Congress of Vienna was from 1814 to 1815. So early 19th century, they decided what was going to happen for Italy. And by the 1820s, just a few years later, they were like, all right, we're going to fight for this. But it took them until the 1860s to actually achieve it.
Wow.
So like 40 years later, finally got it. And 3 wars later, they finally got it.
That's how it goes sometimes.
That's how it goes. So because of all this, Collodi spent his youth as a political activist, writing in support of the Risorgimento. Oftentimes it was serious journalism, and other times it was political satire, which I think that comes through in his writings.
I do too.
He eventually became a civil servant for the education department and fought to push through some much needed education reforms.
Yeah, and that comes through too.
Definitely, especially in the book. Every other thing is like, go to school, get a job, provide for your elderly Geppetto. It's like, have you seen Fight Club?
Yes.
When they're talking in the bathroom, he's talking about his dad, and he's like, what do I do? I don't know.
Get a job.
Get a job. I got a job now. What do I do? I don't know. Get married. That's like Collodi talking to Pinocchio.
It sucks how there's a conveyor belt that we're all supposed to be on.
Yeah.
It's not real, listener.
It's not real.
It's a construct.
Don't believe it. Remember, reality is fake. This is a simulation. None of this is real. You make your own way.
Make your own way.
Be your own Risorgimento.
And don't get on the conveyor belt. I mean, if you're on the conveyor belt, that's fine too. But do it because you want to be on it, not because you feel like you have to be. And that's coming from somebody who did it.
You just got to go with the flow. No, that's my problem. I got in the flow. I got to get out of the flow.
Man, we're still quoting Christmas movies.
26 years old. I got nothing to show for it.
26 years old. When that guy is like 45. 60.
I know. All right. Okay, so you're Collodi.
Okay.
Think about this.
I'm ready.
You spend your entire life fighting for a cause. You go to 2 wars. And eventually you win. The cause is won. The war is over. So what do you do with your life?
Spiral into nothingness.
Crippling existential depression? No.
Because you no longer have a motivating force in your life.
No. See.
Oh, wait. No, you write kids' books. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Perfect.
It's not an unreasonable thing to do when you're in that position.
I want to do that now. I mean, I've already started.
I understand that impulse.
He would have been like 35-ish.
Yep.
Mid-30s.
Lived a long life. Good long life. Coming to a close.
Back in the 19th century, getting old. He's an old maid at this point.
Decides to write kids' literature in his sunset years. Feel like I'm in mine too. So
yeah. So I don't know the exact timeline of all this stuff. Whether it was before or after this final war, Collodi at one point took a fateful job translating French fairy tales into Italian. And apparently, Collodi did such a great job that he was offered the chance to write his own fairy tales.
That's cool.
It's important to note that children's literature was a relatively new concept in the 19th century. The type of content that children would want to read and the style in which the content should be written were fairly new innovations. They were still figuring this stuff out. There were things, but it was still all pretty new and weird and like This is like where we get Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, you know.
I mean, it's the same kind of cusp that they came to in the 80s and 90s to make entertainment for kids. It's the same kind of point in culture where they're like, now we want to speak directly to this generation. We want to speak to the children. What do we say to them? And what are they going to be receptive to?
And we're a bunch of adults, so what do we know about being kids? Like, we forgot that a long time ago. So. And
it begins the out-of-touch adult trying to relate to the child.
Yep.
And creating, their neuroses for them. The circle of life.
There it is. And this is one of the main reasons why Pinocchio is such a dark story. Because one of the only precedents that existed for children's stories were fairy tales, most of which are decidedly not suitable for the average child.
Pretty dark, one might say.
You might say. But Carlo Collodi got his start writing children's stories by translating fairy tales. So his only reference material told him that if he wanted to write his own stories for children, they would have to be
pretty dark.
And when I realized this in my research, this is when everything began connecting in my mind. I was like, oh, that's why cool. Pinocchio is the way it is.
That is really cool.
So he, from here, began writing a bunch of fairly didactic stories for children. In other words, very educational, informative, moralistic type tales. Britannica.com says, all of Collodi's works portray children in a realistic light, imbuing them with mischievous behavior with which youngsters easily identify. Youths.
So Britannica is of the opinion that this is just how kids are, and he was getting on their level.
Again.
As opposed to painting them as mischievous, rambunctious, terrible.
Like I said last time, people think it's because kids could identify with this, and I really just think it's kids are going, hey, man, this is fun. Pinocchio's doing all this crazy stuff we don't get to do, living vicariously. Either way, his stories were well received, but his first major success came in 1876 with an odd little Italian fairy tale called Giannettino. And based on what I've read, this is an allegory for the unification of Italy. Giannettino featured a likable yet unruly boy who got himself mixed up in all kinds of embarrassing situations while traveling the countryside. Collodi found that this type of character helped him to convey many of his own thoughts and convictions through allegory. So he repurposed it for his following story. A story about a day in the life of a certain wooden marionette called La Storia di un Burattino, or The Story of a Puppet. In 1881, he sent this story to a friend who I think was named Ferdinando Martini.
Okay.
Who edited the newspaper for children that I mentioned before. And this little one-off story was so well received that Collodi wrote more chapters, all of which ran in 8 installments over 4 months, covering 15 chapters, ending with the death of Pinocchio, traumatizing children in a similar way that the death of Sherlock Holmes sent England into a state of mourning. The fictional Sherlock Holmes.
Fiction matters, you guys.
It does. The arts matter.
Keep saying it. We keep on saying it.
And after 3 months, backed by popular demand, Collodi pulled a Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and brought Pinocchio back to life, only to subject him to numerous tortures and punishments for another 21 chapters, lasting nearly an entire year under the name The Adventures of Pinocchio.
Meanwhile, poor Pinocchio was like, "You could have just left me dead, bro. Why you gotta be like that?
Happy swinging there on that tree.
You just gotta keep beating me up." I see how it is. Man, Del Toro, listeners who've seen Del Toro, you know what I want to say right now.
I have to say, if I did pass and I felt that piece and then I was brought back, I feel like I'd be pissed.
Same.
That's one of my favorite tropes is when a character's brought back and they're like,
why?
Damn it.
Why would you do that?
Why would you do this to me?
He was on his own pleasure island, where the misfit toys go.
Oh, Lord. Like Giannettino, The Adventures of Pinocchio utilized a classic folktale structure. This is a naively unprepared peasant venturing out into the world only to become involved in an array of dangerous and humiliating antics, showcasing the ignorance of the peasant who has no knowledge of the world whatsoever.
Because they're trying to teach something. They're teaching the people that are reading this, don't be ignorant, don't be like this person. Like, you need to be informed.
I mean, or it was for a good laugh.
Or that too, yeah. But also, like, you're going to learn these lessons through this story, or these things that we're trying to,
I suppose.
The things that he believed in, that he wanted to share.
I suppose so, yeah. Yeah.
And also just for the fun of it.
I mean, I think he used it for that purpose, but I don't know how it was used in every other way.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds me of the Decameron.
I am not familiar.
It's not like that really, but I wonder how much of it influenced that kind of storytelling. I don't know.
When was that published?
Little snippets, like the 1300s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's kind of like the Italian Canterbury Tales.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Basically. Very like
I'm tracking.
Satirical, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Little snippets and short stories. So.
Vignettes, as we said.
And one of the main reasons why this structure worked so well at that time is because of the Italian diaspora, which was the mass immigration of millions of Italians across the world, all in search of work in the age of industrialization. Because,
diaspora?
Sure. Diaspora. Italian diaspora. You said it. You heard it here first. Folks, I don't claim to know everything.
That's just what it's called when a culture spreads out through the world, voluntarily or otherwise. I think a lot of the time it's otherwise.
The Italian diaspora. Italy had a brand new government, and the economy was all kinds of messed up. So people were starving and desperately searching for work, but the roads were dangerous to travel because many who couldn't find work would lie in wait of the next sucker to come along.
Yikes.
So the story of Pinocchio painted a sheen of the fantastic across such a new and uncertain time in the lives of many Italians, especially Italian children, who now got to equate the wild adventures of Pinocchio with the excitement of traveling the Italian countryside, allowing children to view the world and their futures through the lens of magic and wonder. So despite the apparent moralizing, the story of Pinocchio showed that the world wasn't all just hard work and hunger. It was also living puppets, talking crickets and other animals, fairies with blue hair that will always be there to save you, unruly boys who turn into donkeys, and all kinds of imaginings that tell children that the world is what they make of it, that if a mischievous wooden puppet can become a real boy, then so can they be anything they set out to be.
I really like that. I like that you said that. And it's kind of interesting looking at Pinocchio the way that we looked at Pinocchio as kids versus the way that they were looking at Pinocchio. Not that it didn't, Starlight, Star Bright, that will always fill me with a sense of hope and wonder and all those things. But I think I, at least speaking for myself, always focused on the moralizing aspects of Pinocchio and the hard lessons and the harsh lessons of Pinocchio. And it's kind of interesting the way that you're saying that is that they at the time, while they probably would have absorbed that, they were probably, or maybe, focused on the magic in the story. And the other part was just regular life for them.
Yeah.
They were living a life of hard knocks. So that's just how
life would have been very hard.
Was going for them.
Especially for kids.
But they got to see the magic too.
There would have been a lot of that. You don't get to go play. You have to work. Like, and you're like 7 years old.
Sure.
Kids probably weren't getting to be children. That's why there would have been a newspaper for kids, give children something, and why I think this would resonate with them. And that's why I think it was them being able to live vicariously. And
they
why
were
it was
latching
so
on
devastating.
To the good parts rather than us latching onto the harsher realities, probably.
Which is like, imagine having that, and then Pinocchio
Guys.
is hanged to death.
I had one thing.
I had one good thing in this life, and you just took it away from me.
Buzz is yelling about that. He does not like it.
Yeah, I know. Who would?
Oh, wow. You hear that?
No, I will when I do the edit.
He's screaming.
Oh, poor
Sorry.
Buzz. We're actually moving quite along, buddy. We're moving
We're moving, Buzz.
And this isn't really,
poor boy.
This isn't really factoring all that much, but I just wanted to make this distinction that there are two different versions of the original Pinocchio. The one, the story of a puppet, which ends in chapter 15, and then the adventures of Pinocchio, which ends in chapter 36. The first 15 chapters really focus on Pinocchio's relationship with Geppetto. So he has a father, like a paternal figure. And then the rest of the book focuses on his relationship with the blue-haired fairy, who at first is his sister.
Oh. And
then once she grows old, she's his mother. So there's a weird thing we're going to get to where she ages rapidly.
Whoa.
And I have thoughts on what that might represent. But we spend the rest of the book thinking that Geppetto is dead.
Okay.
So we'll get to that, and we'll figure that out. I'm trying to condense a lot of material. A lot of it's going to be out of order. I'm just talking about it.
Listener, if you've forgotten, obviously we're covering not only the book, but the Disney film and a lot of the context around both of those things as stories.
Yep.
So we're really diving into everything.
This is just Pinocchio. Pinocchio.
Pinocchio.
I'm done insulting the Italian people.
Yeah, any Italian listener has long been gone. Sorry.
No, we're just American idiots.
We are just American idiots.
So let me catch us up to the point where the book rejoins the movie. since we left Pinocchio hanging by a tree in the book.
We did.
And that's not in the movie. So how do we get from point D to point 11? Oh, my.
Oh, my.
All right.
What's going on?
The dead girl in the little white house is no longer a dead child, but a beautiful fairy child.
Thank God. I couldn't take much more of the dead girl in the window.
This is the very beginning of chapter 16.
Jesus.
She looks out the window again, sees Pinocchio hanging by his neck from the tree branch, so she rescues him and calls out for the most famous doctors in the neighborhood to decide whether or not Pinocchio is dead. There's a crow doctor, an owl doctor, and of course the talking cricket, who isn't just miraculously alive, but is also now a famous doctor. So
he really got a promotion. He got an upgrade. He went from dead as a doornail to famous, famed, esteemed doctor.
Squished against the wall. Green slime. So
good for you, Jiminy, who isn't Jiminy.
It's really fun, this scene. I'm not going to dive into all of it, but I did want to comment. They're bumbling doctors. They're animals. They're not real doctors. And one of the ways that they try to figure out whether he's alive or dead is like one of them will say, well, I think he's dead. Unless, of course, he's not dead, in which case that implies he's alive.
Oh, yes.
It's very
astute.
Ridiculous kind of discussion. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. Again, I recommend reading the book. It's dark as hell, but it's fun. It's fun. So they eventually agree that Pinocchio is alive. And once the fairy is finally able to get him to take his medicine, that's a whole thing.
And it's not a spoonful of sugar.
Well, she gives him a little bit. He agrees to take the sugar, but then doesn't take the medicine. And then he promises again.
So that's where the Sherman brothers got it.
Could be.
Could be.
And there's a whole scene with the rabbits coming in with the black coffin, and they're threatening to bury him alive and all this shit. It's dark. It's dark.
You guys remember the Del Toro version? Just checking.
Don't ruin it.
I'm not. I'm just talking to the listener. It's just something between me and them. It has nothing to do with you.
I'm not even listening to you. I'm looking at my notes. So once he takes the medicine, he goes to meet Geppetto. On the way, he once again encounters the fox and the cat, who once again convince him to finish the journey he started to the field of miracles and sow his golden coins.
Do you really want to listen to them again, Pinocchio?
No.
Do you remember what happened last time?
He didn't know it was them.
Damn.
They were cloaked.
That's right.
In darkness.
Damn.
But he does notice that the cat's missing a paw.
That he bit off.
But he doesn't really put it together.
Yeah, because he's Pinocchio.
He's got a wooden noggin. So before, in the story of Pinocchio, or the story of a puppet, they call the place Dupeland. Now, in the Adventures of Pinocchio, they call it Fool's Trap. So it wouldn't be a true half-book report if I didn't read from the book a little bit. So I have some passages that I think are pretty heavy, and I want you to really grasp, the writing style and the context.
No, I'm interested, definitely.
Which, it's a translation, but
I want to know.
These are the things I found particularly dark. So this is the description of Fool's Trap. As soon as they entered the city, Pinocchio saw that the streets were full of dogs who had lost their hair, and whose mouths were wide open from hunger. There were shorn sheep trembling with cold, roosters without their crests and combs, who were begging for a grain of maize, butterflies who could not fly, because they had sold their beautiful wings, peacocks without tails, who were ashamed to be seen, and pheasants who were crawling along, mourning for their beautiful gold and silver feathers, lost forever. So, pretty intense.
Yeah, it's sad.
It's where fools go to get trapped. So, Pinocchio, a fool himself, buries the coins and goes away for some time to let the tree grow, about 20 minutes. And when he returns, what does he find? He's been duped!
Of course.
The coins have been taken, and he's now poor once again.
He keeps getting knocked down, but he gets up again.
I get knocked down.
They're never going to keep him down.
But I get up again. Never going to keep me down. My name's Pinocchio. So Pinocchio, I'm summarizing. I'm trying. I'm
intrigued by this whole, because in my mind, I'm also doing layers, right? I'm doing layers of the film. I'm getting layers of the book, and now layers of this new interpretation that I watched, and it's all kind of blurring together.
Sure. In
this wild, somewhat terrifying combination.
I'm sure it's a beautiful rainbow.
It's about 4 colors, but it is beautiful.
And they're all muted and sickly and dark.
They are.
Yeah. All right. So Pinocchio runs to tell the judge that he's been robbed. And out of some sense of ironic justice, the judge has him arrested. And Pinocchio spends 4 months in jail.
My gosh.
He's eventually released for an even dumber reason than he was arrested for. So I'm not even going to get into it.
Oh my God.
On his way home, he comes across a giant snake with a smoking tail. And when Pinocchio gets stuck in the mud, it says, the serpent was seized with a fit of laughter. And he laughed and laughed and laughed until he burst a blood vessel in his heart and died.
Oh, I didn't expect that. I really didn't. You keep doing that to me.
There is so much death in this book.
My God.
So much
Well, there was
death.
so much death around all of them, too.
That's true. That's true.
They were more accustomed to it than, we were in the 90s. And
much more comfortable with it, right?
And even in the 40s, they were more aware of it,
right.
with the Disney films.
I mean, the kids agreed not to cause mischief on Halloween because they were they believed in the war and they were so afraid of the enemy.
Yeah.
They were like, no, it's our patriotic duty not to
cause trouble.
Even celebrate Halloween. Yeah.
Yeah.
Death changes people. Huh.
Who knew?
And it's funny because apparently this snake, his heart bursting or whatever, apparently this coined the English term burst with laughter or burst out laughing.
Oh.
Because the Italian translation came out to literally something like to split skin or to crack skin.
Ooh.
And it makes me wonder if split my sides doesn't fit in there somewhere too.
Side splitting.
Side splitting laughter, that kind of thing. Interesting.
Wow. Maybe he originated all of that.
But then it just keeps getting worse. Starving, Pinocchio sneaks into a field to eat some muscatel grapes and gets his leg caught in what amounts to a bear trap.
Because that's what this story is missing, is a bear trap.
You know what we need?
Checks out.
Iron teeth closing in around the leg of a child. After which Pinocchio is captured, chained up, and forced to act as a watchdog for a peasant trying to protect his chickens from polecats.
So now he's a scarecrow.
Yeah.
That is a scarecrow.
Well, the reason he has to act as the watchdog is because the peasant's other watchdog he had just died earlier that morning.
Oh.
So he needs to replace his watchdog.
ASAP.
So more death.
Are we going to merge with the movie ever again?
We're getting there.
I don't even know where we are anymore. It's just...
I'm just hitting you with all the darkness.
A cyclone of death and darkness.
I'm skipping things too.
Yikes.
Once he's released, Pinocchio returns to the woods to find that the fairy's house is gone. In its place is a gravestone. And it says, "Here lies the blue-haired child who died of sorrow on being deserted by her little brother Pinocchio." Caitlin's covering her mouth. It's a silent scream of sorts.
I just don't even know how to react to this anymore. That is horrific. That alone, that one thing would have probably undone me as a young Italian child.
I know.
I would have said, no more.
Oh, I know.
No more of this. I won't read this anymore. No, thank you. Because
you would have slowly closed the book and set it down and sat silently staring at the wall for a few hours.
Yes. That's me as a young Italian child, yes.
In your past life.
In my past life, I feel like this happened to me because I think I've talked about it on the show before, but, to merge this back in with all of our trauma and why we, have a podcast about this stuff.
Guilt trip,
that right there, something catastrophic or terrible happening that you could have prevented but didn't, whether you knew that you could prevent it or not, by your actions. Like you did some action or something that caused something terrible that you can't undo, which we're going to get to more of that very, very soon.
Very soon.
Very soon.
Oh, yeah.
But when you've caused something that you can't undo and you have to live with the consequences of your choice, there is nothing that hurts me more.
Nothing worse.
There's nothing that is worse to me. Like, if it's something that I could do something about and I didn't or I failed to, that's so much worse than something bad happening to me by chance or because of somebody else's action. Because I take it all on if you can believe it, I just take a lot on my shoulders all the time. I take it, from other people. Is that guilt? I'd like it. Thank you. I'll take it. And I just live my life that way.
Yeah.
So I always feel bad. No matter what I do, I always feel bad for other people. I feel bad that I'm inconveniencing other people, etc. So all of that goes back to something like this.
Yep.
And if I had read it as a child, that's it.
Would have ruined you.
That's it. Would have ruined me.
Man.
It did. And I didn't even read this specific thing as a child, but stories like it.
But I mean, All Dogs got you like that pretty good.
It sure did.
I mean, that
All
kind of thing.
Dogs did. Absolutely. Because it's the same sort of thing. It's like you've done this and now you can't undo it. You can never go back.
You can never go back.
You can never go back.
I mean, honestly, this is just the beginning of all the things that we're going to cover eventually that, use this tactic to quote unquote teach children lessons, educational
They
material.
They teach children lessons, all right.
They teach you something.
I can vouch for that. They do teach you something that you can't let go of, no matter how hard you try and how much therapy you attend.
Yes. Hey, as long as it's not court mandated and it's just voluntary, therapy's okay. Therapy's good. I mean, just, for you, the individual.
Right.
All right. You ready? Take a deep breath. You're going to be okay. We're going to get through this.
Okay. I'm trusting you right now because this is a lot.
So just like you, if Pinocchio was you, if you were Pinocchio, he sits and cries all night long. And at dusk, he is told by a large pigeon that his father is looking for him. Geppetto is setting out to sea to continue his search in another land. But just as Pinocchio reaches the sea, a storm blows in and he watches Geppetto's boat go under.
I don't even know what to say anymore, y'all.
So Pinocchio swims out looking for him until he comes to an island where he learns that Geppetto was most likely eaten by a giant shark that swims in those waters.
Gotcha.
He's said to be as large as a 5-story building, and his mouth is so wide and deep that it can hold a railway train with its engine smoking and all.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask a question really quick and derail you maybe just very briefly.
Derail, emphasis on the railing because it's train. Emphasis on the railway train.
The railway because the train.
Sure, hit me. We're so close to meeting up with the movie.
Okay, that's because on behalf of myself and the listener, I must ask you right now. Where are the donkeys?
Oh, we're getting there. We're so freaking close to the donkeys.
Okay.
You can almost smell them.
I could tell. I could feel it, listener. I knew that's what you were wondering, and I took it upon myself to ask.
Yes.
Because, when we discuss the fish,
it
seems to my Disney-fied mind that we've skipped some donkeys.
Patience, my young cricket. This is just the first mention of the shark. The shark is mentioned multiple times throughout the adventures of Pinocchio.
I see. Okay. So
this is the first time we were made aware.
We're just building the shark into the canon of the story.
Right.
He's not meeting the shark right now.
Right.
Gotcha.
I have a feeling that in the 3-month hiatus between killing Pinocchio and reviving him, that Collodi actually sat down and thought about how he was going to plan out the rest of the story. And so he saw fit to introduce the shark as soon as possible.
Because he was excited about the shark, presumably.
Probably very excited to, have the shark eat a bunch of people.
Clearly he has a, morbid sensibility about him.
Don't we all?
Don't we all?
All of us here at That's Pretty Dark, don't we all have that?
A little bit. Mine isn't as intense as his.
So there's a scene on this island where he gets into a fight with a few boys, and one gets really hurt, like bloodied up and unconscious. So Pinocchio is arrested again and runs away and is almost killed by a fisherman who mistakes him for a weird-looking fish. And the whole thing is very much Sebastian the Crab in the chef's kitchen.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I can picture that.
Flour and all.
Sebastian, you say? The Del Toro listeners know what I'm thinking of right now.
All right. I can't wait to watch it. So once again, Pinocchio goes looking for food, and a woman agrees to feed him if he helps her carry home her pails of water.
Jack and Jill went up the hill.
After which he recognizes her and realizes that she is the blue-haired child all grown up. She's now the blue-haired lady. So
she didn't die, just her childhood did? Her innocence died?
Yes.
Whoa.
That is exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. It's like Toy Story. I'm thinking of something else though that's like relevant to our show, but there are stories like this where you cross over.
That we've covered?
I don't think that we've covered, maybe not yet, but like you cross over and you're no longer a child, you're now an adult, and you have to kind of in real life, listener, I'm sure in your experience and definitely in mine, the lines blur a lot more than they do in fiction like this.
Yeah.
But you reach a certain point where you no longer need your toys anymore as Andy. You go to college.
Labyrinth.
Yeah. That's what it is.
That's what it is.
Duh. Jesus.
You idiot.
It's Labyrinth because it's you'll always be here if I need you. But I can't need you anymore. Or I can't need you right now. I have to grow up. I have to move forward with my life. So, man, sorry. I just took us on a tangent for that, but whoa.
No,
I'm so glad she didn't actually die.
That was my critical analysis of this scene and yours too. And now that's pretty dark. Takeaway.
Official takeaway.
From this scene. That's our stance. That's our approach, our commentary. Her innocence died. Her childhood died. And that's why when he sees her again, she's a grown woman. She's, I mean, she's not old, but she's
She's not a child.
Older than he is.
Probably younger than us.
I mean,
Ugh.
yeah, I don't know. Depends on your interpretation. Mm-hmm. She's described as a little woman, so I don't know what that means.
I'm a little woman, hey.
Yeah, it's you, basically. You dye your hair purple sometimes.
I do. I've had blue hair. I had a blue streak in my hair last year. Nobody called me the Blue Fairy. Missed opportunity.
That's your new nickname.
The Blue Fairy.
So, and I mentioned all this stuff. I'm summarizing all of this because this is where we really start to see a lot of the connections happening with the chaos of the little vignettes and the broader picture. Mm-hmm. This conversation between Pinocchio and the blue-haired fairy woman happens in chapter 25. And this is the first time aging occurs to Pinocchio. He says he wants to grow up and be a man. And she says, before you can be a man, you first have to be a boy. Puppets live and die as puppets. But Pinocchio can become a real boy if he's good.
Here we go.
So he goes to school, makes good grades, and is such a good boy that the fairy agrees to grant him his wish. And the night before this is supposed to happen, we meet Lampwick for the first time. Mm. And he tells Pinocchio he's running away to live in the most beautiful country in the world, a real dreamland called Playland, where there's no school, no masters, no books, and everyone amuses themselves from morning until night. And Pinocchio makes a weak effort to stay and be good, but eventually he's convinced to go too. And this is where we meet the driver of the coach that's pulled by 24 donkeys.
Here we go.
This little detail creeped me out from the book. It's subtle, but it says, when the coach arrived in town, its wheels were padded so that they didn't make a single sound.
Ew.
Isn't that creepy?
Yeah.
All the better to whisk away your children in the night, my dear. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just so freaking...
To shoot a quick hole in that, could they not hear the donkeys?
Well, I thought about that too, but they're wearing boots. They're literally wearing boots, white boots.
Ah, okay. So maybe they are quiet. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So this thing can come in unheard in the middle of the night, so unseen, and take away all your children. The boys. Mm-hmm. All
boys,
the children.
Specifically.
I mean, it's, it doesn't really specify in the book, but I think in the movie it's just
boys.
It's just boys. Mm-hmm. There are so many boys in the coach that there's no room for Pinocchio. So he decides to ride one of the donkeys. Mm. Spoiler, them ain't donkeys, them little boys who've been turned to donkeys. So
I bet you that the listener knew that.
Probably. So the donkey kicks Pinocchio away, which angers the coach driver, who pretends to go whisper something into the donkey's ear, little sweet nothings. But really, he takes a bite out of the donkey's ear, like punishment. And when Pinocchio hops on the donkey's back, it bucks him off. And the driver goes and takes another bite out of the other ear.
Okay.
And it's just pretty dark. That's all.
It is pretty. No, I'm just saying, okay, like.
And there are illustrations of the donkey crying tears.
Oh my God.
Like it's horrible.
Oh my God.
All right. The movie. In the movie, this character isn't known as just the driver, but as the coachman.
The coachman.
Capital C. Mm-hmm. And we meet him at the Red Lobster Inn, where he's dining with Honest John and Giddy the Kitty.
How would you blokes like to make some real money? Well, and who do we have to...
And Honest John asks, who do we have to kill? But of course, instead of saying kill, he gives the whole thumb across the neck.
He does, yeah.
Thumb swipe.
Thumb swipe.
And you said before that the voice of the coachman was the same guy who voiced...
Same guy who voiced Stromboli.
Stromboli. Which, listening back, that was shocking.
It is shocking.
The voices are so different.
He did a great job.
I'm collecting stupid little boys.
Stupid little boys. You know, the disobedient ones who play hooky from school. And he takes them to a place called Pleasure Island. And this is 1940, so probably a bunch of kids playing pinball.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, see?
Nice.
I had to weave that back in. Go listen to our Pinball Wizard episode.
Well, I'm about to do a similar thing.
But to pop the top?
In some of the English editions of the original novel, the coachman is compared to Mephistopheles, who is the demon prince in the Tale of Dr. Faustus.
Oh, hell yeah.
And his victims, the boy victims, like Faustus, sell their souls to the coachman for a life of seemingly pleasure. And like the devil, the coachman is there at the end to make good on his deal.
Interesting.
And we reference Faustus in Sorcerer's Apprentice, I think.
I believe we did.
One of our episodes, we've talked about Faustus. So
something like that, yeah.
Just thought that was another
that is very cool.
That you
so
may have heard.
That was just people were like comparing him to Mephistopheles.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I think that checks out.
I think so too.
For sure. So where we left the movie last time was Pinocchio and Jiminy escaping Stromboli's wagon.
I had mostly notes on the movie this time because that's what I looked into last time. And watching it back and with Stromboli in his wagon and the way that he talked to Pinocchio and his sword and the way that he bit the coin, you know,
yeah.
and it was fake. And so he gave the fake one to Pinocchio. Pinocchio wouldn't know.
No, of course not.
And as a kid, I didn't quite put that together either. But as an adult watching it, I was like shady man. How dare you?
That was the telltale sign.
Yeah. And the way that he threw the knife on the puppet that was in the...
on the puppet, right.
That's in the box.
Oh my God.
The scraps, basically. That, he slices the chest open. Like, the knife lands
into the rib cage. Yeah.
It's just very, violent. And it just carries
violent.
through that violence.
That is one of the more violent aspects of the movie. Because you're like, oh, God.
Stromboli's just swinging the sword around the whole time.
Yeah.
It's pretty dark.
It's wild.
Because there's very little regard for anything or anybody. And that's how he...
Yeah.
That's how you can tell he's a villain, really.
It's like a strong clumsiness of these villains.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they swing about. It's probably a metaphor
it's disregard.
for swinging
it's just,
your dick around. But
I mean, it is that too. I think it's that too. I almost made the joke and I was like, I can rise above it. And then you did.
No, I can't. You know I can't.
I almost said it because it is very much like that's his power symbol, you know?
Right.
And it's violent and it's disrespectful. And I do think, maybe not in so many words, you know, I don't know that the animators intended for that to be the conclusion, but I think that it checks out. It makes sense.
I mean, they can't help that the object is already naturally phallic.
No,
it was just they chose the object.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, he's intercepted by Honest John and Giddy. Just like in the book, when Pinocchio is trying to go back to Geppetto, he meets the fox and the cat. It's like there are parallels. They are similar.
Mm-hmm.
So I forget exactly how they do it, but they see him to the coach where he meets Lampwick, and all the boys are taken to Pleasure Island.
Apparently, and I didn't notice this watching it, I read about it after the fact, but when Foulfellow is trying to coax Pinocchio into going to Pleasure Island, he gives him a card with an ace of spades on it. And he says, this is your ticket. And supposedly, in popular myth, folklore, whatever, the ace of spades is often referred to as the death card.
Oh, shoot.
And I hadn't heard that before. But if that's true,
I haven't either.
That's a really cool, metaphor to layer into the story.
You think it's because the spade is like a shovel?
I think so.
Grave digging?
That's what I thought. Yeah, I thought of the grave diggers.
I like that.
Guys, if you play cards and if you know about cards, tell us if that's true. I love cards. I enjoy playing cards, but I am not good at it. So
we should do a bonus series on card symbolism.
I think that'd be amazing.
Because playing cards they go back a long way.
They do. They absolutely do.
So the movie Pleasure Island is quite different from the book Playland.
Playland.
Which, like we said before, the movie is clearly an updated, more modernized, or it was contemporary at the time, version of Pinocchio, which makes a lot of sense. So basically a big carnival.
A carnival,
there are unhealthy foods. We have cakes, pies, ice cream, and dill pickles.
Apparently a delicacy for children.
Apparently.
I mean, that was the popular snack at the skating rink. So who am I to say?
I don't know.
In the early 2000s, that was the snack of choice. Not mine, but other people.
There's just it's chaos. There's kids everywhere. It's just, you're seeing them, you're hearing things. It says be a glutton, it's all free. Then there's the rough house. The roughest, toughest joint you ever seen. Come in and pick a fight. There's Tobacco Row.
Tobacco Row. Oh my God.
We're finally to the children smoking the tobacco.
Children smoking tobacco. Really awful and stereotypical Native American depictions.
Yes.
From, straight from the 1940s.
When I did smoke, it was American Spirits.
Yeah, I remember.
Mm-hmm. Good times.
I do remember.
Get your cigars, cigarettes, and chewing tobacco. Smoke your heads off. There's nobody here to stop you.
My God.
There's a model home there for, it's open for destruction, they say.
Yeah, they just come in. It's like what do they call them now? The rage room?
So there's a rage room.
Have you seen those?
No.
It's kind of like it's like a place where you go a bowling alley or axe throwing, darts, whatever. It's one of those types of places or escape rooms, but they call it a rage room. And they just lock you in and let you destroy everything in the room. It's like a padded room.
I've never heard of this.
I don't think we have one. but they exist.
Interesting.
In larger metropolitan areas.
I want to do one of those storm rooms.
What's that?
You sit in a room and it's like there's like water in there, but it's like a simulated storm. There's lightning and there's thunder.
Oh, we
and it's
talked about
raining.
this recently.
Yeah, you sent me a video of one.
Yes. Yeah. It's like a pool. It's like a hot tub
It's
or
a
a pool,
pool.
but
Yeah.
all around you are screens.
It's like LED panels
Mm-hmm.
all around the room, and it's a simulated storm.
Yeah, that
I
would
wanna
be
do
really,
that.
really cool.
It'd be way cool. Anyway, off topic. But I don't know what else to say about the movie version except it's just like we eventually get to like a pool hall.
Well, yeah, there's a pool hall,
they're
pub
drinking.
kind of thing. They're drinking, they're playing pool, they're smoking.
Pinocchio is getting sick off of a cigar, which I've been there, buddy.
I was going to say.
Totally been there,
I wrote it down. I think Pinocchio's depiction of the cigar drag is exactly what I would look like if I were to take a drag off a cigar.
My first cigar I ever had, I smoked the whole thing in just a couple hours.
Oh, that makes me ill. The
I
thought
was
of it makes me
sick as
sick.
a
I can't even sit
dog.
near them. Cigarette smoke has always bothered me, like asthma and stuff, and
Yeah.
cigars too, especially. So sitting near it, I get a headache and get sick.
Mhm.
So imagining what it would feel like to smoke it, I think I would look just like Pinocchio does.
Yeah, you turn green.
Mm.
It's not that off.
And
How dizzy he looks.
so they kind of depict it. They kind of portray. I keep saying the word depict and I annoy myself. They kind of portray this pleasure island, this playland. They portray it as all the bad things that you want to do, but you're not allowed to do or you can't do. Personally, I'm not really into any of that stuff. And I mean, maybe that's why it's for young boys. I don't know.
I mean, I'm into the cakes and pies and ice cream.
Sure,
and
okay.
I love a dill pickle, but I don't want a roughhouse. I don't want to go smoke.
I don't need a roughhouse. I don't
want
need
to
to go
destroy
smoke.
a home.
I'll play pool.
I'll go play pool and have
I'll
some
play
beers.
pool, but yeah, I don't have these destructive urges, I guess, that maybe a young boy would have. But the thing also in the movie, the quote that I wrote down in these moments, of course, we have the darkness, the inherent darkness that comes from a grown man that's looking for little boys to prey on.
Yeah.
The bad ones who play hooky from school. So he puts it on the kids. He's saying, like, if you weren't being bad already, I wouldn't have an opportunity to find you. You know, like, he makes it their fault.
You're making me do this.
You're making me. What choice do I have? You're a bad boy.
Such a bad boy.
But he also says,
They never come back as boys.
Oh, yeah.
I hate it. Just
They
knowing
come
what's
back
coming.
as men because I make them.
That just freaked me out. Like, that made my skin crawl.
Yeah, no, there are lots of undertones that we're going to get into. There's a lot to this Pleasure Island playland thing. And there are many more versions of this actually that we're going to get into. But first, I want to read the same sort of description from the book. Okay. Just so we can see.
We're going to be jumping back and forth a little bit.
Jump back and forth.
I think.
So it's a bit more, like I said, this is an updated version, a modernized version. The book is much more archaic. Mm-hmm. Some of the things I don't even know what they are. And I don't know how much of that is just the 1800s and how much of that is just this translation.
No telling.
Playland was like no other country in the world. The population consisted of children. The eldest was 14 and the youngest scarcely 8 years old. Mm. The merriment and shouting and noise in the streets were maddening. There were children everywhere. Some were playing skittles, some quoits, cycling or ball. Some were riding on wooden horses, others were playing blind man's buff or chasings. Some were dressing as clowns and were eating burning tow or tau. Some were acting or singing or reading or turning somersaults. Others were walking on their hands, while still others were trundling hoops or dressed like generals were marching along with paper helmets, ordering troops of soldiers about. There was laughing and shouting and hand clapping. Some were whistling, some were clucking like a hen that had just laid an egg. There was such noise and confusion that without cotton wool in both ears, anyone would have been deafened by it. There were theaters, crowded all day long, and on all the walls of the houses, badly spelt remarks had been scribbled with charcoal. Graffiti.
It sounds like summer camp.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
There are no rules.
No rules.
Have you ever, this is a total aside, did you ever see a reality show called Kid Nation?
That sounds really familiar.
I hope there are listeners that know what I'm talking about. I personally love the show because, like, the sociologist in me has been there since I was very, very young. But Kid Nation, I think it was like early 2000s, maybe when I was in high school, so mid 2000s, where they just did a sociological experiment where they put a bunch of kids in this old Western town and they divided them into teams.
It's like Westworld for children.
Uh-huh.
Hopefully with less sex.
Oh, yeah. There was no sex, thank God. At least I hope
good.
not.
Good.
And they divide them into teams. And so they would give them certain challenges, but they were like, they had certain age groups, you know, and they divided them amongst the teams and everything.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of like let life play out just to see how the kids reacted to certain things and could they take care of each other and could they survive.
How old is this show?
I mean, early to mid 2000s, I think. I don't know. But it was short-lived. Maybe there was like a season or two, if that. It may have been canceled after the first season because I think it was kind of cruel and unusual, the way that they did it.
Sounds like there'd be a lot of
but I was younger at the time. I feel
on.
like I was in high school. But when I was watching it, I was like, this is fascinating just to see how kids act outside of that construct of, you know, like, can they make it? Can they do this? And as a kid, I felt like I could have. And then watching that, I was like, ooh, I'm not so sure. Because you have to factor in all of the behavior of the other kids that aren't like you, you know, or aren't.
I mean, that's true.
And that's kind of what this is. It's like free for all. Everybody's going buck wild and you can't control, like, how well can you control other kids? And then it becomes this like weird power struggle.
Oh,
so,
it would quickly turn into Lord of the Flies.
It did. It was like real life Lord of the Flies.
I mean, like even like Pleasure Island here, it would be King of the Hill.
That's the vibe I get too.
Toughest kid on top.
Yes.
I mean, absolutely, as fast as possible.
The bullies end up winning.
Every time.
Because there's no, you know, regulation. But yeah, anyway, sorry, that's an aside, but I thought about it when I was watching it, when I was watching the movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, whatever happened to those kids? Hope they're doing okay.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I take all that with a grain of salt because I know, like,
it's produced, of course.
It's reality,
this, but
reality TV is scripted.
Yeah, of course.
It's not reality.
Manufactured.
None of it's real.
I'm also thinking about Bug Juice, which I loved as well.
Bug Juice, oh my God,
Bug
right.
Juice. It doesn't come in a jar. But they weren't doing, you know, crazy stuff. They were just out of summer camp.
Right.
Anyway.
Speaking of crazy stuff. In the book, this is Playland. In the movie, this is Pleasure Island. In a few of the other Pinocchio imaginings, this place is also known as the Land of Toys, the Land Where Dreams Come True, Terra Magica, Fun Forever Land, which I hate the sound of that one.
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds so dark.
It sounds like Michael Jackson's ranch.
Oh, no. It's like Neverland, right?
I know, it is Neverland, yeah.
And Fantastic Island. This concept is based on a fabled utopia in medieval literature known as the Land of Cocaine. That's actually cocaine, but the Land of Cocaine, everybody.
Oh dear. What are we getting ourselves into, listener?
Cocaine is a mythical land of abundance that represented an escape from the harshness and scarcities of peasant life, as well as symbolizes wish fulfillment. It's akin to something like an Atlantis or an El Dorado. A description from the New York Public Library calls it a medieval peasant's dream, offering relief from back-breaking labor and the daily struggle for meager food. The Germans called it, I apologize all you Germans and all of you Dutch people, the Germans called it Schlaraffenland.
Sounded close.
Schlaraffenland.
Translated to?
Diaspora.
Oh.
Or translated to the land of milk and honey.
Ah, yes.
The Dutch called it Lulikkerland, or lazy luscious land.
Ah, that makes sense.
And it usually focuses on feasting, sleeping, and pleasure, especially sexual pleasure. This may be why Disney's Pleasure Island, where boys run amok and live out every single one of their most forbidden desires, has such a strong undertone of uncomfortable, inappropriate darkness.
It does.
And yes, I did just reference Hocus Pocus twice.
We'd be remiss, and I'm sure there is a listener, at least one, referencing it. But yes, you are remembering it right. It was not a fever dream. At one point, if you're a Disney Parks person, there was a section of what was then called Downtown Disney, is now called Disney Springs, that used to be called Pleasure Island.
Pleasure Island.
It was called Pleasure Island because of Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Most of the establishments weren't open until the late evening hours. And it was always a 21 and up area. So you couldn't enter it without being 21 and up past a certain time.
Right.
When these, you know, clubs are going on, whatever is happening, the debauchery there in Pleasure Island. when I lived in Orlando, was underage. So I never experienced it, but
Bourbon Street, but at Disney World.
at Disney World. And I do think I feel like it was more tame than that. I just have to assume that. But there were a couple bars, a couple clubs, and it was all this idea of like, whatever you want, like whatever you say goes. And it's this, like that was how they marketed Pleasure Island.
It was creepy.
So it's a little bit off to me. Just never quite got on board with it. I'm all for having fun. And I mean, I've learned that pleasure is not a dirty word. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how we were taught growing up in the culture that we subscribed to at the time. Anything that was pleasurable was bad. And I don't think that that's true, but I do find that this is an interesting lesson. And it takes me back to a lot of that thinking, that type of mindset.
Well, there can be too much of a good thing.
Everything in moderation.
Everything in moderation.
That's my new strategy.
Funny enough, when I was in my public speaking course in college, when I had to persuade the class that Disney should rule the world,
nice.
They were like, well, question, it's for kids, right? Like, what is there for adults to do?
And you got to talk about Pleasure Island in class.
And I got to talk about Pleasure Island. And they were like, oh, sold.
Do you know what's great? I also did one of my speeches in my public speaking class. I did my informative speech about the life and times of Walt Disney.
Amazing. Wow. See, you know what? We were always destined to be friends.
Of course we were. And I was in that class with one of your best friends.
Josh.
Yeah, Josh.
Yeah. Modern depictions of cocaine tend to all go the route of Pinocchio. This false utopia. So original cocaine is like utopia.
The land of milk and honey. Yeah, utopia.
Potentially ironic, maybe, but it's utopia. But everything from Pinocchio onward, it's...
We've all wised up, right? We've wised up as a human race to realize that there's always a catch.
Right.
And so that's the satirical part of it coming out.
We know that utopias don't exist.
Yeah.
Right. The most cliched use is probably the evil carnival with its facade of fun masking a sinister secret.
Like in We're Back.
And like in the second most recent, Are You Afraid of the Dark season?
Yeah.
The most famous example might be Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory.
Oh, nice. Good one.
Yeah.
Good one.
Thanks.
Which we might cover.
Oh, we will cover that. The darkest example, however, and probably one of the only ones to come before Pinocchio, would be Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah.
The witch is fattening them up so she can cook and eat them.
They're living a good life until they're not. The other shoe, and this is just from my personal Kaylin library of knowledge.
Yeah.
And understanding of the world. Just imparting
and John Mulaney's.
And John Mulaney's. Yeah. Just imparting some wisdom from me to you. But I was just going to say, the other shoe will always drop.
Always.
And I hate to be that way about it. I really do.
No, it will.
But it's just a fact. That's one of those facts of life that you learn eventually.
It always does.
And I've been served a huge helping of that second shoe. Just
how many left shoes do you have?
More than the right ones. I'll be honest. Yeah. Somehow I've gotten more than my fair share of the shoe dropping. It always happens.
But the darkness of Pinocchio...
I like how we're both like, where do we even go beyond this?
The darkness of Pinocchio. This is where we're going to center ourselves. The darkness of Pinocchio is a close second to Hansel and Gretel, if not tied for first, if not first. Because the reality is that this is a human trafficking scheme.
Yep.
These children are being kidnapped in the night and sold into slavery. And this coachman character gets away with it because the children catch something that the book calls donkey fever, which literally turns them into donkeys. Why a donkey, you might ask? I'll tell you. In the early chapters, Collodi often uses the imagery of Pinocchio turning into a donkey or becoming like a donkey. The talking cricket says something like, if you don't go to school, you'll grow up to be a perfect donkey, and everybody will make fun of you. So in many cultures, the donkey itself represents ignorance and stupidity, being synonymous with ass or jackass in the English language. But in Italy, the donkey also represents goofiness and labor.
Okay.
So this is some fantastic foreshadowing to Pinocchio eventually, literally turning into a donkey. Although we can't assume completely that the original intent was prophecy, because the playland concept comes in later chapters, after chapter 15. So it's hard to say, did he think of that and then never use it?
He maybe didn't mean to do that, but it was something that he had in his mind.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm so glad we don't publish things serially today, because so much of the story is discovered throughout the writing process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's too important. So I don't know how they ever did that stuff.
Yeah, that's wild.
In the movie, it takes just a few hours for Pinocchio to begin his transformation, even though he really only gets some donkey pieces before he and Jiminy make their great escape. He gets the ears.
Is
there anything else?
The tail.
Gets a tail?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Jiminy Cricket comes in and finds Pinocchio smoking with Lampwick, playing pool, and Jiminy is going on a tirade, man. Like, he is... Yeah. Kids today, he is coming in just...
Catch you drinking and smoking and playing pool.
Firing all cylinders. I'll say, there's not anything wrong with pool, Jiminy. Pool's fine, but the pool halls, the places where the people go, the seedy side of life, I guess, in this context. I don't think that. I'm not saying that as a judgment. I'm speaking as Jiminy.
Pool was always considered very negative.
Negative, lower class, etc. Right. But I do feel Jiminy on a lot of this misguided rage, because he's just coming in mad and ranting. He's ranting Jiminy. And I do have a soft spot for ranting Jiminy. But he does say that Pinocchio is going to doing all this, you're going to make a jackass out of yourself.
Right.
Go on, laugh. Make a jackass out of yourself.
I did notice that from the movie. They used the word jackass. Yeah.
And that, kind of leads us in.
Which is funny because, they used the cricket.
And it's kind of said that the film takes a step further than the novel because it adds this lesson on top of the donkey transformation. Mm-hmm. Basically saying if you indulge in vices like drinking, gambling, smoking, you'll end up ruining your life for good. And even if you somehow manage to quit or outrun your addictions,
right,
before you've totally doomed yourself, you get away from it before you reach that point, you're still going to suffer the consequences of your actions forever. And this is referenced by Pinocchio keeping those donkey ears and the donkey tail for the whole rest of the film.
Right.
So they don't let you get away with it that easy, kind of thing. Like, these mistakes that you've made live with you. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about living my life, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, hyper aware of those consequences, because I felt like, and I was kind of taught, like, even if you're forgiven, so to speak, or you've escaped that lifestyle or that vice, whatever it may be, you're still going to live with those consequences forever.
Right.
And as we know, the idea of forever was terrifying.
It's terrifying.
So
yeah, I mean, that's also coming off of Prohibition, Great Depression, and seeing what that kind of thing does to a person. Like, I think American culture at that time was really trying to reevaluate a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we were going into another war. So
I
think they were looking at like scarcity, addiction, being selfless, giving things up.
And really, like, what kind of person do you want to be? And are you going to be the kind of person that you want to be if you go down this rabbit hole?
Are you going to contribute to society and help us all out?
Yeah. Are you going to be able to help us? Are you going to be able to fight for your country and stand up like a man? And are you going to be a little boy that goes off into Pleasure Island?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think there was a lot of that allegory being pushed at the time.
Absolutely, it was.
If allegory is even the right word, metaphor.
I think that's, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's quite astute.
Thank you.
Welcome.
As we watch the film and we get to this point, I felt sick in my stomach. Literally felt sick.
Was your face green?
Yeah, probably so, honestly. I do. I've been known to turn green. But I felt it as soon as I heard the donkey noises begin. It did something to my child psyche too that was living back in there in my head. And I was like, oh my God, here it comes. Because you can't outrun it. You can't get away from it. You've made your bed and now you have to be a donkey in it.
Yeah.
They even say, like, you boys have had your fun and now pay for it.
Right.
So
I wrote that down too, yeah.
Heavy, heavy stuff. And stuff that I carried with me and clearly a generation carried. More than one.
Yeah.
From the time that the film came out. And clearly this is a lesson that I think the film did we'll learn from you as you tell us, but I do think the film probably took that part a little further than the novel, because that was what was important to not necessarily just Disney, but culture more so at the time in the late 1930s, 40s.
Sure. Yeah, it went further with that it's just different commentary. Again, this is 60 years removed.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole lifetime removed from the context of the stories
of the
being
original
told.
Story. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So they're building their own context around it, like you said, with the war and everything.
They reimagined and retold the story of Pinocchio to fit modern, like the contemporary context in a way that people would understand. And they were prizing certain morals or certain ways of life that would have been more desirable or conducive to the American way of life.
Conducive to the American way of life and conducive to, like you said, supporting the rest of your American community.
Right.
Through these times, because it was a time when people relied on each other a little bit more than they do today in modern times. For better or worse.
Almost a little bit communist.
A little tiny bit.
But the difference with the book, I will say, being a different sort of commentary, it was more of like, if you don't either go to school or learn a trade and make your own way in life and like earn your living and contribute to not only the country, but like your community, be a strong citizen of Italy, this newfound Italy we have here.
Yes, we're building a country, and if you don't play your part, it's all going to fall apart again. It has already fallen apart. It's fragile.
You might as well just be an animal. Yeah. Like you're basically no better than a donkey.
If you're not contributing.
Yeah.
If you're focused on your own pleasure and you're not contributing to society.
Like if you don't make life for yourself, you're going to be at the mercy of another person who owns you.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to use you like a donkey. They're going to own you, and you will have no say in what you do. You will have no other resources and nothing.
You're swallowed up by the system, yeah.
You will be a slave. You'll become a slave because you'll have no choice but to do whatever you have to do to survive.
Right. In that context, at that time, true. I mean, it's awful, but it's true.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just a different kind of context.
Yeah, they had different priorities, similar but different priorities with these two stories.
And not to mention that this is an allegory within an allegory about feudalism. He just spent his life fighting against the concept of feudalism in the Austrian Empire that had ruled Italy for hundreds of years, and they just won their independence. So he's now going, kids who don't understand, you don't want to be a donkey owned by somebody else who's telling you what to do and how to live your life and working laboriously under their rule. Don't be a donkey.
Don't be a donkey. And don't be naive.
Yeah, don't be naive.
Don't be so naive that you fall into that lifestyle for yourself.
This is where the education comes in, teaching children these virtues of like, be Italy, be Italian, have some pride. Like it's that ancient valor that the guys from the Renaissance were writing about. Like it's the patriotism.
Yeah.
And get ready. Feudalism is why the Irish potato famine was so bad. There would never have been a famine in Ireland if it wasn't for the English rule of Ireland.
Boom.
Feudalism.
We knew your Irish potato famine knowledge would come.
Are you having a good time at the party? The party's fun. The music is loud. Do you have a good time? What are you drinking? So the Irish potato famine, they didn't have a lot to eat.
Did you know that?
All the food that they could eat, it was being exported to England.
This is listener, for the unsure listener that doesn't know where we've gone. This is Christian doing an impression of himself.
They couldn't eat the food.
At a party.
Landlords are bad.
I would just like personally to take a moment to acknowledge how horrendously dark the transformations into donkeys
in the
are in the movie.
It's rough.
It's talked about a lot. It's talked about all over the place, and for good reason. The music, of course. So we have the music.
Right.
Pinocchio's reaction to watching Lampwick transform into a donkey is horrifying as an audience member watching.
Yeah.
Lampwick's desperation to Pinocchio, trying to reverse it or stop it or find some way to save himself.
Right.
It's described by some of the Disney executives as one of the hardest scenes to watch in Disney animation, but in animation or film.
I've heard it's hard to watch. I mean, and I get it, but
I find it hard to watch.
It kind of just went right past me.
Oh boy. But I tie it back to my childhood. I watched it when I was very young and it was very scary.
Yeah.
And also that same idea of just like there's nothing you can do now. It's too late. It's too late. You can never go back, Charlie. You can never go back.
Can never go back.
And it's just this like permanence that's very, very scary to me.
I think that's it. It's the permanence of it.
But like we said, Pinocchio just gets the ears and the tail, and Jiminy and Pinocchio are able to, thankfully, escape. But it wouldn't be a series on Pinocchio if we didn't spend at least a moment acknowledging that scene and what it did to all of us collectively.
I know, but that's a common thing. People say it's hard to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I do get it.
You're just hardened. Didn't bother you the way it bothered me, but man.
No, I was bothered by the lifeless Pinocchio puppet that Geppetto was dancing around the living room. I found that disturbing.
Yeah.
That bothered me. I just, you know.
We're going to get to some more, a few more things that are also just disturbing to have.
It's difficult.
In a children's movie.
And you know when you see the scene with the cages and all the donkeys? The one that can talk?
Yes.
And what might your name be?
Alexander.
So you can talk.
Yes, sir. I want to go home to my mama.
That bothered me.
Me too.
When he was like, nope, you're not quite done yet. This egg isn't boiled yet. You know, whatever. And he's like, kicks him back into the cage.
Yeah.
And he's like crying and talking. I'm like, that got to me.
All of the kids as donkeys, like they all regret it.
It was so
the ones
upsetting.
that can talk. Because they're watching the kids that have had the full transformation. They're watching them and they know what's coming for them.
Yeah.
Like that bothers me too. And that just going back to like our core fears. I'm very I have a lot of health anxiety. I think I've told you, listener. And as you know, I have problems with my health. So this is not surprising. But the idea of being, I mean, COVID did it, but the idea of being alive or during or experiencing an illness, you see the progression of an illness, right? Where you watch the people around you like yellow fever or whatever, especially in times where there was less medical knowledge than there is now, to watch the progression of an illness and then you get a tickle in your throat.
Thinking like consumption,
tuberculosis. But you get a tickle in your throat too, and you know that 2 days ago, this friend that's on their deathbed got the same tickle.
Yeah.
And so there's this weird anticipation of like doom. Like you're just, you're doomed, you're done. And it's the same kind of thing. They call it donkey fever, like you said, where there's this transformation happening and they see their future and they can do nothing about it.
It's not vampirism, it's donkeyism.
Yeah, pretty much. But, oh my God, if we're talking
rough.
about things that bother us,
It's rough.
There's almost nothing on the green earth that gets to me more than that sort of idea that you can't prevent it and it's coming for you no matter what.
It's pretty intense. And another heavy thing, when we see where the donkeys are going to be shipped off to, one says the circus, which is a reference to the book.
Okay.
And another says to the salt mines.
Yes.
Did you ever study like salt mines and how horrible that was for the humans who had to like work as slaves in the salt mines? That's a direct reference to like American slave trade.
Honestly, yeah.
That's heavy stuff. It's awful stuff. And then the cronies, the dark-looking, blobby black, I think that's a reference to the book with the fox and the cat wearing all
cloaks,
black
where you can't
like,
tell who they
cloaks.
are.
Yeah. But the whole thing, that was just so dark to me.
So dark. I'm glad you brought that up, the scenes beyond the transformation while, you know, we see what's happening to the rest of the kids.
And like the coachman, when he's talking to these blobby henchmen.
Give a bad boy enough rope and he'll soon make a jackass of himself.
That's it.
The idea there is give an idiot enough rope and he'll hang himself. Yeah. I mean, like, come on, Disney. I mean, holy shit. I mean, hallelujah. Holy shit.
It's pretty dark, Disney.
Whew. I just think it's so fun. I mean,
it's just
God.
The dark references and the dark history all kind of merging together.
So much. I know. All right. Back to the book.
Back to the book.
So like I said, in the movie, it takes just a few hours for Pinocchio and Lampwick to turn. In the book, it takes 5 months. And Pinocchio turns full donkey.
Oh.
Pinocchio
different.
Is sold to a circus.
Okay.
Where he's trained by being beaten with a whip. And he's pushed so hard during a performance that Donkey Pinocchio falls and breaks his legs.
Oh my God.
Now that he's lame, the ringmaster sells him to a man who plans to kill him and skin him and use his skin to make a drum. This man takes lame Donkey Pinocchio to the ocean, ties a stone around his neck, and throws him into the water to drown him.
I have no words anymore.
While underwater, a school of fish comes and begins eating him alive.
Oh.
And they take so many bites out of him that they eat away all of the donkey bits, leaving nothing but the bones, aka
the
wooden frame.
Gotcha.
I would say you can't make this shit up, but apparently you can.
You can. Someone did.
Mm-hmm.
Collodi.
You old Lorenzini, you. This, naturally, is about the time Pinocchio swims away and is swallowed by a giant shark.
And thus, Act 3.
Yes, the close of Act 2. Here we are, Act 3. In the movie, once Pinocchio and Jiminy escape from Pleasure Island, they return to Geppetto's cottage to find it dark, empty, and covered in spiderwebs. And the Blue Fairy delivers them a letter that explains what's happened to Geppetto.
Why, it says here he went looking for you, and he was swallowed by a whale. A whale named Monstro.
And it was just sort of like, how do we inform Pinocchio? Okay, we'll just send a letter from the sky. Mm-hmm. They'll read it, and then they'll know everything.
I do think that's how they came up with it. I mean, in kind of looking into the production of the film, and we went into that a lot more in part 1. So if you didn't listen to part 1, you can go back and hear all about the production. But they kind of said that. They were like, how do we get from this point A to point B? How does he figure out that Geppetto's gone or where Geppetto is? Yeah. And, the Blue Fairy fixes that.
Thank God.
Gotta love a Blue Fairy.
Made her the Blue Fairy. It's the glue that holds the whole story together. Mm-hmm. Really.
And that's why it's my nickname.
Kaylin, Blue Fairy Andrews. White Claw. That's funny because my next note was, I would say, when it comes to reimagining Pinocchio, 2 of the greatest questions would be, how do we get Pinocchio and Geppetto both into the mouth of a sea monster? And then also, how do we get them back out?
Mm-hmm. Good questions.
Good questions.
Maybe something awful happened to him.
Don't worry, son. He probably hasn't gone far.
The trauma of coming home to an empty house.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that you journey back to get to your home, to your father, to the warm fireplace and the safety of your home.
And it's just not there.
Empty.
Yeah.
That gutted me. And it gets to me, thinking as a child, I was afraid of being kidnapped. That happens to Pinocchio. I was afraid of something like this where my loved ones are just gone. They disappear. They've either left me behind or worse yet, they've gone looking for me and something's happened to them.
Yeah.
So that same idea we were talking about earlier where I've caused this problem.
Right. Yeah. Your fault.
Coming back to that empty house will never, that's going to live in my mind. It always has, as something just unthinkably awful.
Yeah. No, it's...
No Figaro.
No Figaro.
No Cleo.
Where are they?
Where'd they go?
But I gave it a hard time saying that the first half hour had nothing to do with the book. It was a pure invention. But I could see myself just going and watching the first half hour of Pinocchio, just for comfort.
It's pleasant.
It's so cozy. Mm-hmm. Music, clocks, a fire, sleepy Jiminy.
Figaro.
It's so comforting.
It is.
And then to see it cold and dark and empty that's the stuff of nightmares.
You're just ripping away what is comfortable, what little comfort there is.
That is nightmarish for sure.
And I hate the thought of that. I really do.
Woof.
Sorry. So to get us into the belly of the beast.
Let's get swallowed. In the book, once Pinocchio is eaten, we come to find that Geppetto is there. He's still alive. Mm-hmm. And he has lived there for nearly 2 years on the goods from a merchant ship that the shark also swallowed.
Oh, convenient.
Very convenient.
Convenient.
And, there's a lot of talk, but they eventually escape because the shark is very old and suffers from asthma and palpitations of the heart. So he sleeps with his mouth wide open.
I relate.
It's really as simple as that. And because he has these issues, he sneezes. The shark is prone to sneezing, which is referenced in the movie with the smoke and everything of him. The movie is much more cinematic, of course.
You don't say.
Yeah. They spent a year on that water, I heard.
Man.
from you. Mm-hmm. So Pinocchio and Jiminy, they begin this great underwater search. And there's another reference to the book with them tying stones around themselves so that they will sink and be able to walk the ocean floor.
And I'm like, don't try that at home, kids.
Definitely not. It's the 40s.
And this is also one of the first, animated features that's ever existed. So they're not really sure how that's going to go over with the audience, the children. They don't know that they're creating behaviors for children to imitate just yet, necessarily.
The great 1940s American child diaspora. They all tie stones around themselves and sink to the ocean floor.
Go out to the ocean.
I get Pinocchio not drowning, but why wouldn't Jiminy the cricket
I've been
drown?
Saying it the whole time. I don't know. That was a very convenient convention of this film.
It's one of those things.
Mm-hmm. How does Cleo stay in her bowl?
I don't know. Why would he take them with him?
Why would he bring
Why
Cleo
wouldn't he
and
just
Figaro?
give them to the neighbor and say, watch these while I'm gone?
Mm-hmm.
It's because Walt Disney said, I need as
I want
much
more Figaro.
Figaro as possible. Put him in the belly of the fish.
More Figaro, please.
I will also say that I was so concerned for both Cleo and Figaro.
Me too. Oh, me too.
Throughout this whole sequence.
It did raise the stakes, for sure.
There were times when I was looking at the animation just for Figaro. And then when I saw Figaro, I was like, oh my God, where's Cleo?
Yep.
I know it's all water, but she's not a saltwater fish, okay?
She's not.
She can't be in the ocean.
Very concerning.
Gotta take care of the babies.
I love those babies.
Geppetto?
So, like you said, in the book, they're there for years. In the movie, it feels a little bit more dire. They're fishing, or Geppetto's fishing, trying to get food, which one of the characters stranded is a fish, but you've eaten fish in front of her before, I guess, so you don't care about that.
Yeah, the logic is a bit off.
But like we said, he has Cleo and Figaro there with him in the belly of the whale, and they are precariously close to starving to death.
Right.
Presumably, because they're all disappointed when they can't find fish and they don't know what they're going to do. And I think he at one point does say that they may starve or something. They're kind of giving up hope.
He says one more night of this and we're done for.
Yeah. And at that point, Cleo begins to build her own tombstone in her bowl, knowing
Really?
that she's going to die.
Oh my God, I missed that.
Yes, that hurt me. I was like, water baby Cleo.
Water baby.
Knows she's going to die, and she's preparing a tombstone in her bowl.
Oh my
because
God.
she knows it's coming. That's pretty dark.
That's so Looney Tunes.
That's pretty dark.
That's like seeing Wile E. Coyote or Tom and Jerry, from Tom.
Mm-hmm.
They make their own grave and lay
they do
down.
They do that kind of stuff a lot.
All the time.
To me, this is worse than that.
It's because it's Cleo, baby.
Because it's Cleo.
It's
and
water baby.
I don't know. I always took death with a grain of salt in the Looney Tunes, more so.
Right.
And Tom and Jerry, etc., because they all kind of evade the realities of death. But it's very clear that Geppetto and his pets aren't going to do that.
I know.
Or it doesn't seem like it, right?
Even if Cleo's older, Figaro is a little kitten.
Yeah, Figaro is a kitten. But Geppetto just seems shocked by this whole, turn of events. And I mean, starving in the belly of the whale was not on anybody's bingo card.
No.
Nobody saw this coming. So
No, the 1940 bingo card, no. But if you go searching for somebody, maybe don't go out on a little wooden boat.
Yeah.
Searching across the oceans for them.
Yeah, that's a bad move.
It's kind of dumb.
Probably.
Yeah.
But as you were saying, eventually in the film, they are reunited. Pinocchio finds them.
And then, so Pinocchio gets the bright idea to use the shipwrecked wood to start a great fire, to smoke out Monstro.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty dangerous work for a wooden puppet.
It sure is.
Yeah. Once they get Monstro to sneeze, they're able to sail out on the raft that Geppetto previously had made.
Mm-hmm.
And they can sail to safety.
Miraculously.
Kind of. But then, Monstro comes after him.
Right.
You know what? This chase scene must have been thrilling to watch in the 1940s. In the movie theater, big screen, never seen anything like this before.
Sure.
It must have been magic come to life to see all the water and this crazy giant whale.
Animated very well. I mean,
It's
well.
really well done.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I did forget, though, was that Pinocchio is killed
Uh-huh.
in the process.
Uh-huh.
I did forget that.
They really linger on that face-down shot in the film.
They really sell
I mean,
the fact
it's
that he's not moving.
4-5 seconds.
Too long.
Longer than I wanted them to. Mm-hmm.
I remember reading the book and thinking about watching the movie and kind of going, well, they don't kill him in the movie, so...
Au contraire.
I was wrong. So very wrong. And I can't believe they did it. But like you've said before, this is now known as a Disney death.
Yes.
Because the character dies, but then they miraculously come back to life, or they're brought back to life.
Or you're made to think that they die.
Right. Yeah.
Yep, that's a trope on TV tropes, known as Disney death.
I love TV tropes. So, because Pinocchio has essentially sacrificed himself for the other characters, he's rewarded with the gift of becoming a real boy. So the puppet itself, the dead, lifeless puppet, literally transforms into the boy, which is an important distinction apart from the book.
Oh, okay.
After escaping the shark, Pinocchio and Geppetto swim to shore to find a cottage that once belonged to the fairy, but now belongs to the talking cricket. They live here for a while, and Pinocchio works weaving baskets and makes enough money to take care of Geppetto. Eventually, Pinocchio is made aware that the fairy is in the hospital. She's very sick and has no money, so Pinocchio sends her all the money he has. And because of the selfless act, the fairy comes to him in a dream and finally grants him his one true wish, to become a real boy.
Wow. My Del Toro listeners, I'm just going to tell you guys, I really did like what they did with the Blue Fairy. I'll just say that much. It was very cool.
Yeah? You liked it?
Mm-hmm.
It was cool?
It was cool.
All you guys think it's cool?
They're saying yes.
All right.
Or either they're saying it was terrifying. I don't know.
So she comes to him in this dream, and she says,
"Brave Pinocchio, in return for your good heart, I forgive you all your past misdeeds. Children who love their parents and help them when they are sick and poor are worthy of praise and love, even if they are not models of obedience and good behavior. Be good in future, and you will be happy."
Be good in future, and you will be happy.
And when he wakes up, he's no longer a wooden puppet, but a boy of flesh and blood. The weirdest thing is that his wooden puppet corpse is still there in the room, separate.
So his
from
spirit
Pinocchio's,
became a boy.
Yeah. It's separate
Weird.
from Pinocchio's new human form. The lifeless puppet is described as leaning against a chair with his head on one side, his arms hanging loosely, and his legs bent and crossed, so that it was a miracle that he could stand there. I don't really get it, but
Collodi just really wanted to describe that dead puppet.
He really wanted to.
He couldn't let it go.
Relishing, as the Slate.com article said. All right, so...
Christian just did jazz hands.
Unintentionally. Another of the reasons that this story is so dark is because Collodi originally intended for the story of a puppet to be a classic tragedy. This would end in Pinocchio's death, which served as an example of what gruesome fate may befall a bad child. But because Pinocchio is resurrected and the story ultimately has a happy ending, the Adventures of Pinocchio are technically a classic comedy. But due to all the death and violence and dark humor, it's distinctly a black comedy, but a comedy nonetheless. Once Pinocchio is revived, he's subjected to even greater amounts of darkness, danger, and punishment. So that Slate.com article claims that Collodi begrudgingly saved Pinocchio and set out to torture the puppet as much as possible before the story came to another natural end. I disagree. I do think it's super dark that he was murdered. And I do think what Pinocchio goes through from that point forward is brutal. But the structure of the narrative, this birth, death, and rebirth cycle, technically makes him an epic hero. The birth, death, rebirth cycle is an aspect of the hero's journey. Scholars Thomas J. Morrissey and Richard Wunderlich explore this theme in a text that they wrote called Death and Rebirth in Pinocchio, which explains that there are two main paradigms or motifs encountered again and again in literature. A journey to hell, which they call an infernal descent, and a rebirth through metamorphosis. The infernal descent commonly takes place in Western epics. Think Gilgamesh, Odysseus, Aeneas, and Dante. The metamorphosis is more commonly seen in fantasy and speculative fiction like Harry Potter, who has to die and then be reborn to fulfill his destiny and become the hero.
My Del Toro listeners, you know what's up.
I'm so jealous of you guys right now. These tropes are rarely combined, but it has been done successfully a few times. Some say Jesus himself spent 3 days in hell before he rises from the dead and is reborn through metamorphosis into a new body that no one, not even his mother, recognizes. In Lord of the Rings, Gandalf dies and then is reborn through metamorphosis from gray to white. And then we have Pinocchio. They say, Pinocchio is truly a fantastic hero of epic proportions. Beneath the book's comic fantasy texture lies a symbolic journey to the underworld, from which Pinocchio emerges whole. And they go on later to explain that his rebirth comes in the form of metamorphosis from a wooden puppet to a flesh and blood boy, completing his hero's journey and manifesting growth as a transformation into a real boy. Because real boys, quote unquote, are kind, selfless, obedient, responsible, yada, yada, yada. So this suggests, it's my favorite stuff. This suggests that when Pinocchio is hanged on the tree, he quite literally dies and is plunged into a depraved, nightmarish underworld of sorts, where the seemingly impossible and unspeakable become possible and spoken. This is an eldritch land on the spiritual plane between life and death.
We learned about the eldritch lands.
Eldritch lands, yeah.
Nice.
Which explains how the talking cricket has come back to life, and how also the little dead girl has transformed into the fairy with blue hair. This is a place where Pinocchio is constantly tempted, mocked, and abused, and the only way he can escape is by keeping his good heart, by not letting that world beat him down, and by learning that it's far better to do good for others than for yourself.
There's no place like home.
No place like
There's
home.
no place like home.
And once achieved, he's allowed to be reborn through metamorphosis as a flesh and blood boy, no longer a puppet.
Because he's earned it on his hero's journey.
Yes and no. Because the general takeaway is that he's earned this, right? He's earned this gift.
He's taken his licks, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Clancy Martin, who wrote the article about lying in the original Pinocchio, he had an interesting thought on this transformation. He says that the way that Collodi ends the story indicates that Collodi is having one last little amused chuckle at the character. The fairy has just told Pinocchio that he did not earn the gift. He simply had a good heart. He had good intentions.
I think both can be true, right?
Well, he often did selfish things, but he was impulsive, misguided, and inexperienced. In other words, he earned the right to be a real boy by simply acting like one.
I mean, I can see that both ways.
It's really, everything is just how you want to interpret it.
We get into the idea of selfless love is what you need, being selfless or thinking of others, that kind of idea a little bit.
Yeah.
When what you see is what you lack, then selfless love will change you back. If you know, you know.
I do know that. What's that from?
Freaky Friday.
Oh, God. Pretty much the same story. You're right.
Yeah.
Same takeaways.
Yep. Same story.
Pinocchio's final words in the book are, "How ridiculous I was when I was a puppet, and how happy I am to have become a real boy." So the ironic twist here, according to Clancy Martin, is that the fairy's gift to Pinocchio is just to let him live as an ordinary boy. In other words, a mere human.
I have a lot that I want to say, and the people who have seen the Del Toro Pinocchio probably know what I want to say.
Oh, but nothing you can say here?
Yeah, I don't know that I can quite... I mean, I can comment, but I think that the Del Toro Pinocchio explores that further as well. They even take it a step further.
That's cool.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that you can kind of take what you need from it, like with most like allegorical or metaphorical works, especially things that are this old and this revered. I guess it's been interpreted so many times for a reason.
Yes.
Because different generations, different groups have different takeaways.
It's versatile. And you can pull what you need from it. Yeah.
And you can use because it was told in such an episodic way, it makes the Disney film feel pretty disjointed.
Yeah.
Because there are different journeys and different lessons from this serial that are being explored.
For sure.
And they had a lot to choose from. Basically, they had to choose what to fit into that film.
Yep.
Pretty much every iteration since then has had to pick and choose like what they are going to make new and what they're going to pull from the original text. Because there's just a lot there. There's a lot to unpack, as we say.
Too right you are, Harry. Too right you are. So as this article from The Guardian says, Pinocchio was a symbol of a newly unified Italian nation. Carved out of a pine log, he became the vehicle for a morality tale about how a child made of base material can be transformed into a real boy, a hardworking and respectful son of family and country. So it's an inspirational coming-of-age story told through a fantastical, whimsical, horrifying lens. And not only is this one of the most popular children's stories of all time, it's also one of the most influential stories. It set the standard and created guidelines that writers of future children's stories would follow for decades. Two of which that come to mind are the Peter Pan stories and the Oz books.
Yes.
And many more.
2 fairy tales that have shaped a lot of what we think of as fairy tales and, stories from our childhoods.
For sure. And that's really the end of my outline here.
Wow.
I just have some final thoughts, and that's it.
Wow. What a journey we've been on.
Yeah.
This one's wild. This one's really...
super trippy.
Pretty crazy.
And it was going to be just one episode.
Christian wouldn't let it stand, y'all. He was like, I have too much stuff. We're doing 2.
4 hours later. 2 years and 4 hours later.
Yeah. 2 different years, 2 different months.
One ironic thought was that if Pinocchio lived even one of his adventures as a real boy, he'd have died so fast.
Oh, quickly. The story would have ended. That's all. That's all, folks.
The first worst thing is that he burns his legs off. I mean,
he
come
sure
on.
does. Ugh.
And most people who study the adventures of Pinocchio think that the main moral, is look what happens to bad children.
Yeah.
But I think maybe there are 2 sides to this moral. The other side might be, look what happens when adults put too much responsibility and pressure and expectation onto
the shoulders of children.
Yes.
And that's our millennial perspective coming in.
Yeah.
That's the latchkey kid. That's the latchkey kid coming out. Yeah. After we have, lived different lifetimes than those children that were hearing Pinocchio for the first time. Much different. And even different lifetimes than those children that were watching Pinocchio in the 1940s.
Yeah.
We grew up in a different time with different priorities, and we're seeing now the emotional effects of this way of thinking about children in society.
I just realized we're further away from the Disney Pinocchio than Disney was from Collodi.
I thought about that too. Yeah, when we were writing our notes.
Can you believe that?
So it was a very recent history for them,
Well, 60 years. But
relatively.
But still.
I still think of that as very recent.
God. Well, yeah, I mean, wow. What a fun time. What a good time.
Yeah.
I had fun researching this.
It was intimidating to me, knowing we were going to go back this far for the first time and not have those direct ties to the 80s and 90s. But I think what we're learning is that at the end of the day, we're all people, and it's really all the same. It's just how you approach it.
I think it still works because I think that if you were watching Disney movies in the 80s or 90s, you were watching Pinocchio.
Oh, totally. I mean, yeah, we were. We have memories from our childhood.
I mean, I'm pretty sure we had a Pinocchio VHS that was re-released during the Disney Renaissance.
Yes.
So, I mean, everything they'd ever made was like re-released as like, hey, all you new kids, here's a brand new movie that
you've never seen.
It's been around forever, but you don't know that.
You've never seen it. Maybe your parents haven't seen it, if it wasn't released on a format that could be accessed easily.
Maybe even then. That is an interesting question. Because, they weren't going to the theater to see it in the 60s and 70s. How would they have seen it?
Right.
If not on TV?
Yeah,
randomly.
I think there were other releases and other, showings and stuff, but it wouldn't have been widespread until home video. The advent of home video occurred really during our lifetime is when it took off. And that's the first time you've been able to access everything before your time.
Both of our families are Disney families. We should ask our parents.
Yeah, when they watched it, or if they remember watching it.
Or do they see it for the first time with us as kids?
I know for a fact that my dad watched a lot of The Jungle Book as a kid.
Okay.
And I don't know on what medium. I'll have to ask him.
That's wild. Yeah. I never thought about that. Huh.
In today's edition of Kaylin Google Something while live on the air. On July 16th, 1985, Pinocchio was released on VHS, Betamax, CED, and Laserdisc in North America for the first time as part of the Walt Disney Classics label.
Wow.
The second title with the Classics label after Robin Hood was released the previous December. So this was the second title that they released under Walt Disney Classics when they were releasing for home video.
Wild.
It would become the best-selling home video title of the year, selling 130 to 150,000 units.
Damn.
Wild. It says then for the first time it was released on VHS in the UK in 1988, 1995, and 2000. The digital restoration that was completed for the 1992 cinema reissue was released on VHS and Laserdisc on March 26, 1993.
There it is.
So I'm not sure which edition of the VHS I would have had, the one from 85 or the one from 93.
I think we had a bunch that were like the white plastic cased. It opened and closed like books.
Same, me too.
Yeah.
Probably terrible for the environment, how many of those I had.
Probably.
And then it had a fourth VHS release and first release on Disney DVD on October 25th, 1999. That was the 60th anniversary edition in 1999. So, yeah, I was curious.
I was too.
Now we know.
Thanks for looking that up.
Anytime.
Wonderful. Well, Pinocchio has been born, he's been murdered, he's been reborn, he's metamorphosized.
Mm-hmm. He has had his Hilary Duff metamorphosis.
And so have we.
And so have we. Hear, hear.
Because of him. Thank you, Pinocchio.
Thank you, Pinocchio.
Thanks, Collodi. Thanks, Walt.
We do owe a lot.
We do.
To this story.
If you were wondering how this factors in, these are milestones in children's entertainment.
I keep calling it, in all the captions and stuff that we do, I keep calling it a building block of children's entertainment. Because it is.
It is.
It is.
It is. Hey, just don't use the word cornerstone. I think we'll be okay.
I haven't used cornerstone
I think
yet.
we'll survive.
Pillar
We're going to
of the
find the
community.
one. We'll find the one cornerstone.
Oh, man.
Somewhere deep, hundreds of years
I wonder
ago.
what the cornerstone will be.
It'll be some fairy tale.
Yeah.
Most likely. Wow. What a way to kick off the new year by ending a series.
Yeah, we've been in the liminal space between series.
We're in between years. We're in
the
between series.
Beginning of the year. Pretty cool.
It's pretty neat.
Thanks for living here with us, guys.
Neato, gang. Thanks for listening.
We appreciate you.
Yeah.
And we'll see you again soon with Courage the Cowardly Dog.
We've been talking about it. There it is.
We keep teasing it, and we're working on it for you.
Well, keep it sweet. We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah. Can't wait.
Keep it pretty dark.
Bye, guys.
For another year. All right, bye.
Thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark, written and produced by Christian Baxter Mott and Kaylin Andrews.
Our music is composed by Jonathan Simmons, and our art is provided by Paige Garland at Power Girl Illustration.
Join the collective nostalgia and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at That's Pretty Dark Podcast.
Share your experiences and let us know what shows, films, or villains still haunt you from childhood at that'sprettydarkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you're never really alone.
So until next time, sweet dreams, everyone.